For years, two highway officers did whatever they pleased. Every stop was a setup. Every complaint vanished. They ruled through fear, convinced no one could touch them. Until they pulled over the wrong rider, an elderly black biker on his vintage Harley, enjoying a Sunday ride. To them, he looked powerless. Just another man to intimidate. But when he didn't break, when he dared to stand tall, they escalated. Harsh words became threats. Threats became violence. 10 minutes later, they were in handcuffs. What those officers never understood is that real power doesn't come from badges. It comes from truth. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun painted long shadows across Zeke's garage floor as he worked the polish into his Harley's chrome. His weathered hands moved in slow, careful circles, treating each piece of metal like it was precious gold. The vintage bike gleamed under his touch, 60 years old just like him, but still running strong. The secret, Zeke said quietly to himself, is treating her with respect. The familiar scent of leather polish and motor oil filled his nostrils, bringing back memories of countless Sunday mornings just like this one. The garage door was open to let in the fresh spring air. Birds chirped in the maple tree out front, and somewhere down the street, a lawnmower hummed. This was his sanctuary, where the weight of memories, both sweet and painful, felt a little lighter. The empty chair in the corner caught his eye. Sarah used to sit there reading her mystery novels while he worked. 3 years since cancer took her. But sometimes he could still hear the rustle of pages turning, still smell her lavender perfume mixing with the garage's mechanical scents. A shadow fell across the concrete floor, and Zeke looked up to see 19-year-old Sammy Green standing in the doorway. The kid had been watching him work on bikes since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. "Morning, Mr. Turner," Sammy said, hands in his pockets. His eyes were fixed on the Harley like they always were, full of that young man's hunger for freedom. Zeke smiled, remembering that same look in his own eyes decades ago. "Come on in, son. Hand me that chamois cloth, would you?" Sammy grabbed the cloth and walked over, his sneakers scuffing on the concrete. He watched intently as Zeke demonstrated the proper way to buff the chrome without leaving streaks. "My daddy had a bike," Sammy said quietly, before he went away. "Sometimes I dream about riding one." Zeke nodded, understanding in his eyes. He'd been mentoring kids like Sammy for years now, teaching them about engines and dignity when the world seemed determined to strip both away. "Tell you what," Zeke said, straightening up with a slight grunt. His back wasn't what it used to be. "You keep coming around, learning about maintenance and respect, and one of these days I'll take you for a ride. Show you what it feels like to be free on the open road." Sammy's face lit up like Christmas morning. "For real, Mr. Turner?" "Got my word on it." Zeke picked up his red shop rag and wiped his hands. "But first, you gotta understand something. Riding isn't about showing off or being reckless. It's about responsibility, respect, both for the machine and yourself." The boy nodded eagerly, soaking up every word like rain on dry earth. Zeke continued working, letting Sammy help with small tasks while teaching him about the bike's different parts. The kid was a quick learner, and his questions were smart ones. After a while, Sammy had to head home for lunch. As the boy walked away, Zeke felt that familiar mix of pride and concern. The world wasn't kind to young black men like Sammy, but maybe, just maybe, he could help prepare him for it. Zeke went inside his house to change into his riding gear. The leather jacket still fit perfectly, worn smooth in all the right places from years of use. He'd bought it with his Army discharge pay, back when he thought the uniform would mean something to people who looked at his skin before his service. In his bedroom mirror, he adjusted the collar, noting the gray in his short-cropped hair and the lines around his eyes. Sarah used to say those lines were laugh lines, but they both knew better. They were battle lines, earned from years of fighting to keep his dignity in a world that tried to take it. Back in the garage, Zeke did his pre-ride check, another habit from his Army days. Oil level, tire pressure, lights, brakes. Everything had to be perfect. He'd learned early that black folks couldn't afford to give anyone an excuse, even for something as simple as a broken tail light. The Harley roared to life with a deep, healthy rumble that vibrated through the concrete floor. Zeke let it idle for a minute, listening to the engine's rhythm like a doctor with a stethoscope. Everything sounded just right. He backed the bike out of the garage, the morning sun making the fresh polish sparkle. A few neighbors waved as he paused in his driveway. They were used to his Sunday rides. Mrs. Johnson next door called out, "You be careful out there, Zeke." He raised a hand in acknowledgement, remembering how Sarah used to say the same thing. The thought brought a small smile to his face as he pulled out onto the street. The residential roads gave way to larger streets, then to the highway entrance ramp. Zeke merged smoothly into traffic, feeling the tension in his shoulders start to melt away. This was his meditation, his church. The wind wrapped around him like an old friend, and the rhythm of the road beneath his wheels felt like a heartbeat. For a few precious minutes, everything was perfect. The sun was warm on his back, the engine purred between his legs, and the world seemed to make sense. Out here, he wasn't a black man in a world that too often saw his existence as a threat. He was just a rider, one with his machine, free as the wind itself. Then he saw them in his mirrors, 2 police cruisers, their lights starting to flash. They moved like sharks through the traffic, getting closer and closer. Zeke's peaceful morning evaporated as Officers Crowley and Keene's patrol cars crept up behind him, their presence casting a shadow over everything else. The police cruisers swerved viciously across lanes, forcing other cars to brake hard. Zeke's heart pounded as they boxed him in, pushing him toward the highway's shoulder. His mind raced. He hadn't done anything wrong, hadn't broken any laws. But experience had taught him that sometimes that didn't matter. Following years of ingrained caution, Zeke signaled carefully and eased his Harley onto the gravel shoulder. Loose stones crunched under his tires as he came to a complete stop. With deliberate movements, he killed the engine and raised both hands where they could be clearly seen. The morning sun that had felt so warm minutes ago now seemed to burn against his exposed skin. The cruisers screeched to a halt, one in front, one behind. Doors flew open with angry metallic groans. Officer Crowley emerged from the lead car, his face already twisted with contempt. Officer Keene circled from behind, hand resting on his holster. "Well, well," Crowley sneered, strutting toward the bike. "Look what we got here. Some old-timer thinking he's in the Hells Angels." Zeke kept his voice steady, respectful. "Good morning, officers. Is there a problem?" "Problem?" Crowley's face reddened. "You're right, there's a problem. Reckless driving, endangering public safety." "Sir, I was doing the speed limit, staying in my lane." "Hold your tongue, boy." Crowley spat the last word like poison. "You think you can talk back to me? In my jurisdiction?" Keene circled closer, his boots scraping on gravel. "License and registration. Now." Zeke started to reach, slowly, carefully, for his wallet. But before his hand could even touch his jacket pocket, Crowley lunged forward. His meaty fingers dug into Zeke's leather collar, yanking him sideways off the bike. The Harley toppled with a crash of chrome and steel. Zeke's knee struck the ground hard, sending pain shooting up his leg. But deeper than the physical pain was the sight of his beloved bike lying there, scratched and dented on the gravel. "Get up!" Crowley shouted, pulling Zeke's jacket. "Think you're tough, old man? Riding around like you own these roads?" 2 decades of Army training kicked in before Zeke could stop himself. As Crowley yanked him up, Zeke's elbow shot backward, catching the officer in the solar plexus. Crowley wheezed, doubling over. Keene rushed forward, but Zeke's muscle memory was faster. His fist connected with Keene's jaw, sending the younger officer staggering. For a brief moment, both cops stood shocked. They weren't used to their victims fighting back, especially not with trained precision. But the moment passed quickly. Crowley recovered, rage turning his face purple. "You're dead now, boy," he roared, launching himself at Zeke. They crashed together onto the gravel. Zeke's combat experience helped him block the first few blows, but he was 60 years old, and they were two trained officers. Keene's boot caught him in the ribs. Crowley's fist slammed into his cheek. The taste of blood filled his mouth. "Not so tough now, are you?" Crowley grunted between punches. Each word was punctuated with another blow. "Learned your place yet?" Zeke tried to protect his face, but they kept coming. The gravel dug into his back through the leather jacket. His vision blurred. He thought of Sarah, of Sammy, of all the young men he mentored. What would they think when they saw what these badges had done to him? The sound of air brakes cut through the violence. A massive semi-truck was slowing on the shoulder ahead, its red paint gleaming in the sun. In the high cab, Frank Dawson leaned forward, his weathered face visible through the windshield. His dashcam's red light blinked steadily, recording everything. Behind them, engines roared. 3 motorcycles pulled onto the shoulder, their riders already holding up phones. Zeke recognized them, members of the Cross-Country Brotherhood, a mixed-race riding club he sometimes rode with. They'd been following a few minutes behind him. "Hey!" one of the bikers shouted. "We're recording all of this!" Crowley's fist froze mid-swing. Keene stepped back, suddenly aware of their audience. But the damage was done. Zeke lay on the gravel, blood trickling from his split lip, his clothes covered in dust. His Harley was still on its side, its chrome scratched and tarnished, like his dignity. Traffic continued to flow past on the highway, oblivious to the scene unfolding on the shoulder. But the witnesses remained. Frank Dawson's truck idled steadily, its dash cam still recording. The bikers kept their phones raised, capturing every detail. The morning sun that had started so peacefully now illuminated a scene of brutality, preserved forever in digital memory. Zeke's whole body ached, but he kept his eyes open, fixed on the officers above him. He'd survived Vietnam, survived loss, survived decades of fighting for respect. He'd survived this too, and this time there was evidence. This time they wouldn't be able to bury the truth along with his bruises. Fresh sirens pierced the tense morning air. A white state patrol cruiser appeared, its lights flashing as it pulled onto the shoulder. Officer Karen Briggs emerged, her hand already on her weapon, assessing the scene with trained precision. Behind her, a distinguished older black man stepped out from one of the motorcycles. Judge Harold Whitaker, his riding leathers unable to hide his natural air of authority. "What in God's name is going on here?" Briggs demanded, taking in Zeke's battered form on the ground and the 2 officers standing over him. Crowley straightened up, trying to regain his composure. "Just apprehending a suspect, ma'am." He resisted. "I witnessed the entire incident, officer," Judge Whitaker interrupted, his deep voice carrying the weight of decades on the bench. "And I can assure you, the only crime committed here was by you and your partner." Keene's face went pale. "Sir, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly well." Whitaker stepped closer, his boots crunching on gravel. "I served 28 years as a circuit court judge. I've seen every excuse, every fabrication, every attempt to justify abuse of power. Not today." Briggs moved with swift efficiency, positioning herself between the local officers and their victim. "Sir," she addressed Whitaker, "you witnessed the entire encounter?" "Indeed." as did these gentlemen. He gestured to the other bikers still recording. And that truck driver up there. Unprovoked assault, excessive force, clear racial bias in their approach and language. Frank Dawson called down from his cab. Got it all on my dash cam, ma'am. Every second. Crowley's face twisted with rage. Now wait, just a minute. Officers Crowley and Keene. Briggs cut him off sharply. Place your weapons on the ground and step back from Mr. She glanced at Whitaker. Turner, the judge supplied. Ezekiel Turner. Retired Army mechanic, respected member of our community, and a personal friend. Keene started to comply, but Crowley stood his ground. This is our jurisdiction. You have no authority. State Patrol has jurisdiction over all state highways, Briggs snapped. And I have probable cause of felony assault under color of authority. Weapons down. Now. The other bikers had formed a loose circle, phones still recording as more vehicles pulled over. A small crowd gathered at the edge of the shoulder. Someone was live streaming. This is ridiculous, Crowley snarled, but finally unholstered his weapon when Briggs's hand tightened on her own. You're making a huge mistake. Briggs moved with practiced efficiency, securing their weapons before pulling out her handcuffs. Face the cruiser, hands behind your back. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed across the highway shoulder. First Crowley, then Keene, their faces burning with humiliation as Briggs secured them. A cheer went up from the gathering crowd. You're witnessing history, folks, one of the bikers called out. Karma finally caught up. Judge Whitaker knelt beside Zeke, who was still lying on the gravel, breathing heavily. Easy, old friend. Help is coming. He turned to Briggs. We need medical attention here. Briggs was already on her radio, calling for an ambulance. Sir, she addressed Zeke, try not to move. Can you tell me where you're hurt? Zeke managed a pained smile, blood still trickling from his split lip. Ribs. Back. But mostly my pride. He glanced at his fallen Harley. And my bike. Don't worry about the bike, one of the Brotherhood members called out. We'll get her fixed up good as new. More sirens approached. An ambulance this time, its wail growing louder. Briggs had her hands full, keeping Crowley contained. He kept trying to turn around, spitting threats. This isn't over, he snarled at Zeke. You have no idea what you're starting. Actually, Judge Whitaker stood, brushing gravel from his knees. I believe it is very much over. Officer Briggs, please add threatening a witness to the charges. The ambulance pulled up, its red and white lights adding to the surreal scene. Paramedics rushed out with a stretcher and medical kit. The growing crowd parted to let them through, phones still recording every moment. Someone needs to call his daughter, Whitaker told Briggs. Alana Turner. She's a nurse at County General. Already done, Your Honor, one of the bikers said. She's meeting us at the hospital. The paramedics worked quickly, checking Zeke's vitals and carefully helping him onto the stretcher. Despite the pain, he reached out and grabbed Judge Whitaker's hand. Thank you, he whispered. Save your strength, old friend. Whitaker squeezed his hand. Focus on healing. Justice is being served. As the paramedics loaded Zeke into the ambulance, the crowd's energy was electric. Decades of similar incidents had ended differently, with covered-up bruises, buried reports, and silence. But not today. Today, there were videos. Today, there was a judge as witness. Today, the handcuffs were on the right wrists. Briggs secured Crowley and Keene in separate patrol cars, reading them their rights with crisp efficiency. The gathered crowd watched with satisfaction as the officers who had arrived intending to abuse their power were now being driven away as prisoners. The ambulance pulled out, sirens wailing as it carried Zeke toward the hospital and his waiting daughter. On the shoulder, his brothers from the riding club carefully lifted his Harley, promising to restore every scratch. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating a scene few had ever expected to witness. A moment when the system, so often broken, actually worked as intended. Fluorescent lights hummed softly as Zeke's eyes fluttered open. His whole body ached, and the sterile white ceiling above him swam into focus. The hospital bed felt stiff beneath him, but compared to the highway gravel, it was a luxury. Tubes and wires connected him to quietly beeping machines. "Daddy?" Alana's voice cracked with emotion. She leaned forward in the chair beside his bed, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from hours of waiting. Tears streaked her cheeks, a mix of fury and relief in her dark eyes. "Hey, baby girl." Zeke tried to smile, wincing at his split lip. "Don't look so worried. I've had worse." "That's not funny." Alana grabbed his hand, careful to avoid the IV line. "When they called me, when they said you'd been attacked," she took a shaky breath. "The X-rays show 3 cracked ribs. You're covered in bruises. They had to put in 12 stitches. But I'm here." Zeke squeezed her hand. "And those officers are behind bars, where they belong." A small TV mounted on the wall caught their attention as the local news anchor's voice rose. "Breaking news! 2 local police officers arrested after brutally attacking a black motorcyclist on Highway 27. Dashcam footage and multiple witnesses." The screen showed photos of Officers Crowley and Keene in handcuffs, followed by a still image of Zeke from a recent community event. Alana turned up the volume. The victim, identified as Ezekiel Turner, 60, is a retired Army mechanic and respected community figure known for mentoring local youth. A knock at the door interrupted the broadcast. Judge Whitaker entered, still in his riding leather but carrying his helmet under his arm like a briefcase. His presence filled the room with quiet authority. "Good to see you awake, Zeke." Whitaker nodded to Alana before taking a seat. "The evidence is overwhelming. Multiple phone videos, the trucker's dash cam, and over a dozen witnesses, including myself." He smiled grimly. "No judge in their right mind would throw this out." "The union lawyers will try," Zeke said, shifting carefully against his pillows. "Let them." Whitaker's voice carried absolute certainty. "We have them dead to rights. Excessive force, racial profiling, assault under color of authority, and it's all on video, clear as day." A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Through the door's window, they could see hospital security holding back a crowd of reporters, their cameras flashing. "They've been here for hours," Alana said, frowning, "demanding statements, trying to get pictures." Whitaker stood. "You don't have to speak to them, Zeke. Not until you're ready." Zeke was quiet for a moment, staring at his bruised hands. "No," he finally said. "People need to hear this, need to see it." He looked at his daughter. "Help me sit up properly." "Daddy, you should rest." "I've been resting my whole life, baby girl, keeping quiet, playing it safe." His voice grew stronger. "Not anymore." Alana and Whitaker exchanged glances before helping Zeke adjust his position. Once he was settled, Whitaker nodded to the security guard, who let in 2 reporters, one with a camera, one with a microphone. "Mr. Turner," the reporter began, "can you tell us about—" "I'll tell you what needs telling," Zeke interrupted, his deep voice filling the small room. "I served this country, came home and built a life of respect. Today, 2 men with badges tried to strip me of my dignity because of the color of my skin." He paused, meeting the camera's lens. "But dignity isn't something they can take. It's something we carry inside. And justice isn't just a word in a book. It's what happened when good people, all those witnesses, that truck driver, Judge Whitaker here, stood up and said, 'No more.'" The room fell silent except for the camera's quiet whir. Even the reporter seemed moved. "That's all I have to say for now," Zeke finished. The reporters thanked him and backed out respectfully. As evening settled in, Alana arranged his pillows and adjusted his pain medication. Judge Whitaker had left to handle paperwork, promising to return tomorrow. The TV still droned in the background, cycling through different coverage of the incident. Suddenly, a new voice caught their attention. A commentator on one of the national networks was speaking. While the videos appeared damaging, sources close to the investigation suggest the motorcycle operator may have provoked the confrontation. Zeke's expression darkened as the anchor continued. Questions have been raised about the speed at which Mr. Turner was traveling, and whether his operation of the vehicle could be considered threatening. They're trying to twist it already, Alana said, reaching for the remote. Zeke stopped her. Leave it. We need to know what we're up against. The screen split to show a police union representative. Our officers have exemplary records. We need to consider the full context of this interaction. Zeke watched silently, his jaw tight, as the narrative began its subtle shift. The same footage that had seemed so clear that morning was now being picked apart, frame by frame, with new experts suggesting alternative interpretations. Daddy? Alana touched his shoulder, concerned by his silence. It's starting, he said quietly, eyes fixed on the screen. Just like it always does. 3 days later, Zeke limped up his driveway, leaning heavily on a cane. His ribs protested with each step, but at least he was home. The familiar sight of his garage, with its neatly arranged tools and the vintage Harley waiting inside, should have brought comfort. Instead, something felt off. His mailbox hung open, stuffed beyond capacity. Papers spilled onto the ground, dancing in the afternoon breeze. Zeke frowned, carefully bending to gather them. The first envelope had no return address. Inside, a crudely written note, "Criminal scum." Another read, "Go back where you came from." Letter after letter contained similar hate. Some typed, some handwritten, all venomous. "What in God's name?" Zeke muttered, his hands shaking with a mix of confusion and anger. The sound of a car door slamming made him turn. Alana rushed up the driveway, still in her scrubs from work. "Daddy, don't read those!" She tried to take the letters, but Zeke held them tight. "Someone better explain what's going on." His voice was low, controlled, but tension radiated from every word. Alana's face fell. "Come inside first, please." Inside his modest living room, Zeke eased into his favorite armchair, while Alana found the remote. The TV flickered to life, showing a press conference already in progress. Police Chief Raymond Doyle stood at a podium, his silver hair perfectly styled, his uniform pristine. "Deeply disturbing information has come to light," Doyle was saying, his face a mask of concern. "While the initial video footage appeared damaging, we now have evidence that Officers Crowley and Keene were responding to a legitimate threat." The camera panned to show enlarged documents projected on a screen behind him. Zeke leaned forward, squinting at what appeared to be a rap sheet. "Ezekiel Turner," Doyle continued, "has a history of violent encounters with law enforcement dating back to 1985. Multiple arrests for assault, resisting arrest, and threatening officers." "That's a lie!" Zeke surged forward, immediately regretting the movement as pain shot through his ribs. "Daddy, please!" Alana steadied him. "Save your strength." On screen, Doyle gestured to more documents. Mr. Turner's motorcycle club affiliations also raise serious concerns. "We have evidence linking him to known criminal enterprises." "My bike club does charity rides for kids with cancer." Zeke's voice cracked with outrage. The press conference continued, each word twisting reality further. Chief Doyle painted a picture of two brave officers confronting a dangerous felon, forced to defend themselves against aggressive resistance. Alana changed channels, but every station carried the same narrative. Commentators analyzed Zeke's posture in the original footage, claiming to see clear signs of aggressive intent. Others questioned why a man with his record was allowed to mentor youth. "They're lying," Zeke whispered, more to himself than Alana. "Every word is a lie." His phone buzzed. A text from Judge Whitaker. Turn on Channel 7. Now, Alana switched channels just in time to see a court spokesperson reading a statement. After reviewing new evidence, the district attorney's office has determined there is insufficient cause to proceed with charges against Officers Crowley and Keene. Both officers will be restored to active duty pending internal review. The remote creaked in Zeke's grip. "This can't be happening," Alana said, her voice small. Another channel showed Crowley and Keene leaving the courthouse, free men, surrounded by cheering fellow officers. Their union lawyer smiled for the cameras. "My clients are grateful justice has prevailed. They look forward to returning to their duties serving this community." The remote finally gave way, cracking apart in Zeke's hands. Plastic pieces scattered across the floor as he surged to his feet, ignoring the pain. "Serving the community?" His voice thundered through the room. "By beating innocent men? By lying? By destroying lives? Daddy, your ribs! To hell with my ribs!" He paced the room, each step fueled by fury. "I spent 40 years in this town, fought for this country, taught those kids in the neighborhood about respect, about doing things right." He gestured at the TV. "And they can just make up lies? Just like that?" Alana watched helplessly as her father's rage built. The TV continued its betrayal, showing clips of experts analyzing Zeke's military record, suggesting PTSD might explain his violent tendencies. The broken remote crunched under Zeke's feet as he moved. His breathing was heavy, hands clenched into fists despite the pain. Everything he'd built, every relationship he'd cultivated, every young man he'd mentored, all of it was being poisoned by these lies. "All those witnesses," he said. "The videos. Judge Whitaker himself saw it happen. How can they just—" "Money," Alana said quietly. "Power. The system protecting its own." Zeke stopped pacing, staring at the TV as Chief Doyle's smug face appeared again, promising a full review of department procedures, while effectively burying the truth. The rage in Zeke's chest crystallized into something harder, colder. The hope of swift justice, the brief, bright moment when he'd believed the system would work, was gone. They hadn't just attacked him on that highway. They were trying to destroy everything he was, everything he stood for. He looked at the scattered pieces of the remote, at the pile of hate mail by the door, at his daughter's worried face. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, Judge Whitaker's Lincoln Continental pulled into Zeke's driveway. A younger woman emerged from the passenger side, Marisol Vega, her press badge catching the sunlight as she straightened her blazer. Zeke watched them through the garage's open door, his hands busy cleaning a carburetor. The familiar work helped steady his nerves, gave him something to focus on besides the rage still burning in his gut. "Brother Turner," Whitaker's deep voice carried authority even in greeting. "Hope you don't mind, but I brought someone who might help." "Ms. Vega," Marisol stepped forward, extending her hand. "Independent journalist. I specialize in police accountability stories." Zeke wiped his hands on a shop rag before shaking hers. Her grip was firm, confident. "Heard about you. You wrote that piece on the evidence tampering at the downtown precinct, the one they tried to bury." "Yeah, that was mine." Marisol's dark eyes held a fierce intensity. "And now they're trying the same playbook with you." Judge Whitaker settled onto a worn shop stool, his normally pristine suit gathering a fine layer of garage dust. "Those documents they're parading around? Complete fabrications. I had my clerk check every jurisdiction they claimed you had priors in. Nothing." "Of course nothing," Zeke said, setting down his wrench with more force than necessary. "Never been arrested in my life. 40 years in this town, 20 in the service. Clean record." Marisol pulled out a notebook. "The falsification is clumsy, too. Dates don't line up with your military service, but they're counting on people not checking too closely. Someone powerful is pulling strings, Whitaker added. The speed of that press conference, the coordinated media response, dropping the charges that fast? This goes higher than just 2 patrol officers. Zeke picked up the carburetor again, needed the distraction. This ain't the first time, you know. Not with these 2. Crowley and Keene? Marisol leaned forward. About 6 months back, they pulled me over near Mason Street. No reason given. Kept me there 2 hours, tearing my bike apart, claiming they smelled drugs. Zeke's hands tightened on the metal. Found nothing, of course, but they made sure to let me know they could find something next time. Classic intimidation tactic. Whitaker nodded. They were setting you up. Wasn't just me, either. Few of my riders, black men mostly, had similar run-ins. Random stops, searches, threats. Zeke gestured to a wall of photos showing him with various young men next to their bikes. Started warning them to ride in groups, keep cameras rolling. Marisol was writing rapidly. Any of them get charged? 3 did. Lost their bikes to civil forfeiture. 1 lost his job because of it. Zeke's voice grew heavy. Started avoiding that stretch of highway after that. Till Sunday. Give me their names, Marisol said. I'll dig into those cases, see if there's a pattern. Judge Whitaker stood, brushing dust from his slacks. I'll make some calls, too. Still have friends in the courthouse. Something this coordinated leaves paper trails. They spent the next hour piecing together a timeline. Every suspicious stop, every random search, every threat. Marisol's notebook filled with names and dates. As they talked, neighborhood kids started drifting by. They always did around this time, drawn by the garage like moths to a flame. Zeke had been teaching them basic mechanics for years, giving them something productive to focus on. Mr. Turner? A teenager named Marcus poked his head in. We heard what happened. That stuff they're saying about you on TV. Come on in, son. Zeke waved him forward. More boys appeared behind him, 5, then 10. Regular faces from his mentoring sessions. Whitaker and Marisol watched as Zeke addressed the group. You've all seen the news, heard the lies they're telling. The boys nodded, faces serious. But you know me, know who I am, what I stand for. They're trying to shut you up, one boy said. Make you scared. That's right. Zeke picked up a wrench, held it up. But see this? It's a tool. Used right, it fixes things. Used wrong, it breaks them. Power works the same way. They're using it wrong, trying to break us. But we know how to fix things, don't we? The garage filled with determined nods. Zeke started assigning tasks, checking oil levels, adjusting chains, basic maintenance they'd practiced 100 times. The familiar routine seemed to steady everyone. Keep your heads up, he told them as they worked. Keep your cameras ready. But most importantly, keep helping each other. That's how we win. Marisol took pictures as the impromptu class continued, while Whitaker made quiet phone calls in the corner. The afternoon stretched on, filled with the sounds of tools and teaching. As sunset approached, the boys gradually dispersed. Marisol left with a promise to start digging first thing tomorrow. Whitaker gave Zeke's shoulder a firm squeeze before departing. Finally alone, Zeke began his nightly routine of securing the garage. He checked each tool was in its place, making sure everything was ready for tomorrow's lessons. The routine usually brought him peace. But as he went to pull down the rolling door, his flashlight beam caught something dark sprayed across the metal. Fresh paint, still glistening. 4 words stood out in jagged black letters. Stay silent or die. The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the buildings when Zeke swung his leg over his Harley. The spray paint's message still burned in his mind, but he wasn't about to let threats keep him home. He had a complaint to file. His vintage bike rumbled to life, the familiar vibration usually bringing comfort. Today it felt different, like a warning. 20 years of working on engines had taught him to trust his instincts about machines. He eased onto the street, letting the bike warm up. Something felt off in the handling. At the first intersection, he tapped his brakes. Nothing. His heart jumped as the bike kept rolling. He pumped again. Still no response. The intersection rushed closer. Morning traffic already building. Zeke's military training kicked in. He downshifted hard, engine braking slowing him enough to swerve between two cars. His boot scraped pavement as he leaned the bike into a controlled slide, finally coming to stop against a curb. Hands shaking with both rage and leftover adrenaline, he dismounted to check the brake lines. There it was, clean cuts through both cables, the metal still shining where someone's blade had sliced. "You okay, mister?" A woman had stopped her car, window rolled down. "Yeah." Zeke's voice was steady despite his racing heart. "Just mechanical trouble." He pulled out his phone, called a tow truck he trusted. While waiting, he took pictures of the cut lines. More evidence of their escalation. An hour later, he stood in City Hall's marble lobby, determination written across his face. The security guard eyed him nervously, but couldn't stop him, not with Judge Whitaker's signed letter in hand. Chief Doyle's office reeked of expensive cologne and polished wood. The man himself sat behind a massive desk, every silver hair perfectly placed. His smile never reached his eyes. "Mr. Turner," Doyle's voice dripped false concern, "I understood this matter was closed." "Closed?" Zeke placed the brake line photos on the desk. "Like my brake lines were closed? Someone tried to kill me this morning." Doyle barely glanced at the pictures. Unfortunate mechanical failure. These vintage bikes can be unreliable. Those were clean cuts, professional work. Zeke planted his hands on the desk, leaning forward. "Just like those false documents you used to smear me were professional work." "Careful, Mr. Turner." Doyle's smile vanished. "Making accusations against law enforcement officers is serious business. Could be seen as harassment." "Harassment?" Zeke's laugh held no humor. "Like the death threats spray-painted on my garage? Like your officers beating me on the highway?" "Those officers were cleared of any wrongdoing." Doyle stood, matching Zeke's stance. "And I'd hate to see a respected community member face charges for assaulting police." Again, the threat hung heavy in the air. Zeke straightened up, his voice low and controlled. "You can threaten me all you want. Truth's still coming out." "The truth?" Doyle chuckled. "The truth is whatever we say it is. Go home, Mr. Turner. While you still can." Zeke turned and walked out, his steps echoing off marble. The guard wouldn't meet his eyes now. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as he walked home, his bike still in the shop. The streets felt hostile, every passing patrol car a potential threat. He cut through an alley, a shortcut he'd used 100 times. Heavy footsteps behind him. Before he could turn, a familiar voice spoke. "Should have listened to the chief." Crowley's words slurred slightly. "Off-duty drunk." Keene stood beside him, nervously glancing at both ends of the alley. 2-on-1? Zeke shifted his stance, decades of Army training taking over. "Guess you learned from last time." Crowley charged first, wild haymaker telegraphing his move. Zeke slipped the punch, decades of working on engines keeping his reflexes sharp. His counterstrike caught Crowley's ribs, drawing a grunt. Keene came in low, trying to tackle. Zeke's knee found his face with a crunch. The younger cop sprawled backward, blood spraying. But Crowley was back up, landing a heavy blow to Zeke's kidney. Pain exploded through his side. He stumbled, caught himself against a dumpster. "Not so tough now, old man." Crowley moved in for another strike. Zeke's elbow snapped up, catching Crowley's jaw. Before the cop could recover, Zeke unleashed a combination. Left hook, right cross, just like the army taught him. Crowley staggered. Keene was trying to stand, face a mess of blood. Zeke's boot found his ribs, dropping him again. This time he stayed down, moaning. "You're dead!" Crowley spat blood, backing away. "You hear me? Dead! Run!" Zeke's voice was ice. "Run back to Doyle! Tell him what happened when you jumped an old man!" "Again!" Crowley grabbed Keene's collar, dragged him stumbling from the alley. Their curses faded into the evening. Zeke's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline crash hit hard, every bruise screaming for attention. He forced himself to walk home, each step an effort. Alana was waiting on his porch, her nurse's eye catching his condition immediately. "Dad, what happened? Who did this?" "Our friends in blue." Zeke sank into a chair, letting her check his injuries. "Tried to ambush me. Didn't work out like they planned. They could have killed you." Tears filled her eyes. "Maybe we should just drop this. Move away." "No." Zeke caught her hand. "They want me scared, baby girl. Want us all scared. I'll never give them that satisfaction." The morning after the alley fight, Zeke's bruises had deepened to purple, but his determination burned brighter than ever. He sat at Judge Whittaker's kitchen table, ice pack pressed against his ribs, while Marisol Vega spread file folders across the polished wood. "It's not just you," Marisol said, her dark eyes intense. "Look at these patterns." She laid out case after case, photographs, police reports, court documents. Black faces stared back from driver's licenses and mugshots. Men and women pulled over on that same stretch of highway. Marcus Johnson, 45, truck driver. Marisol tapped a file. Stopped for erratic driving. They claimed they found drugs in his cab. Lost his license, his job. His truck seized through civil forfeiture. Later tests showed the drugs were planted. Zeke picked up the photo. The man's eyes held the same defeated look he'd seen in too many faces. "Sarah Williams, 38, Marisol continued. Mother of 3. Same story. Random stop, planted evidence, car seized, bank accounts frozen. By the time she proved her innocence, she'd lost everything." Judge Whittaker adjusted his reading glasses, examining court records. All these cases went through Judge Matthew's court. He rubber-stamped every seizure. "And look who made the arrests." Marisol spread out booking sheets. Crowley and Keene, over and over, sometimes together, sometimes with other officers, but always their precinct. Zeke's fist clenched. "How many?" "I've found 47 cases in the past 3 years." Marisol pulled up spreadsheets on her laptop. Total value of seized assets, over $2 million. Civil asset forfeiture. Whittaker's voice dripped disgust. "They don't even have to prove guilt. Just claim probable cause. Take everything you own. You want it back? You have to prove your innocence, while broke and desperate." "But where's the money going?" Zeke studied the numbers. "Department can't keep all of it." Marisol clicked through more documents. "That's where it gets interesting. The seized assets get auctioned through shell companies. Look who owns them." She pulled up business records. Names jumped out. Relatives of Chief Doyle, campaign donors to Mayor Ridley, shell corporations traced back to city officials. "It's a machine," Whittaker said quietly. "Cops make the stops. Judges approve the seizures. Officials profit from the sales. Perfect circle of corruption. And anyone who fights back," Zeke touched his bruised ribs, "gets destroyed." Marisol nodded. "But they made a mistake targeting you. You've got something their other victims didn't. Us," Whittaker finished. "And evidence that goes straight to the top." Zeke stood, pacing despite the pain. "Mayor Ridley's involved?" "Up to his neck." Whittaker pulled out more files. "These shell companies? They all donate heavily to his campaigns. He appoints the judges, controls the police commission. Nothing this big happens without his blessing. I've been tracking his property holdings, Marisol added. He's bought 3 vacation homes in the past 2 years, on a mayor's salary. Zeke stared at the evidence spread across the table. Lives destroyed, families broken, community terrorized, all to feed the greed of men in suits and uniforms. They tried to kill me yesterday. His voice was steady. Cut my brake lines, jumped me in an alley. Thought it was just about revenge. It's about survival. Whitaker stood beside him. You're not just threatening 2 cops anymore. You're threatening their whole empire. Good. Zeke picked up Marcus Johnson's photo again. How many more lives would they destroy if nobody stopped them? Marisol's fingers flew across her laptop. I can have this ready for publication in days. Multiple outlets, so they can't suppress it. With your testimony, they'll come at us hard, Whitaker warned. All of us. They've got money, power, connections. And we've got truth. Zeke set the photo down gently. All these faces, all these lives they broke. Time somebody broke them back. He moved to the window, watching sparrows fight over crumbs in Whitaker's bird feeder. The same birds visited his garage, fearless despite the neighborhood cats. Small things could be fierce when pushed too far. My daddy used to say, evil grows bold in the dark, Zeke said finally. Time to shine some light. Marisol gathered her files, hands trembling slightly, but voice firm. I'll start writing. We release everything. The false charges, the seizures, the shell companies, all of it. Show people the whole corrupt machine. I'll contact federal prosecutors I trust, Whitaker added. This crosses state lines, involves interstate commerce. That puts it in federal jurisdiction. Zeke nodded slowly, mind racing. This wasn't just about clearing his name anymore. It wasn't even about punishing Crowley and Keene. They were fighting something bigger, a system that turned badges and gavels into weapons against his community. He thought of Sammy Green watching him work on bikes, dreaming of riding free someday. Thought of Marcus Johnson losing his truck, Sarah Williams losing her future. Thought of all the others who'd been crushed by this machine. How long, he asked Marisol, to get the story ready? 3 days, maybe 4. She met his eyes. But they'll know something's coming. My editor's already getting pressure to reassign me. Then we work fast. Zeke straightened, despite his protesting ribs. Judge, you get those federal contacts ready. Marisol, you write like your life depends on it, because it might. I'll rally the community. Time people knew what's really happening on their streets. And when they come at us? Whitaker asked quietly. Let them come. Zeke's smile was fierce. We've got something they don't. What's that? Nothing left to lose. Zeke picked up another victim's photo. And everything to fight for. The midnight air hung thick with tension as Zeke's motorcycle purred to a stop behind the safe and sound storage facility. Marisol's hybrid was already there, headlights dark. She emerged from the shadows, holding up a ring of keys. Got these from the evidence clerk, she whispered. He's one of the good ones. Hates what Keene and Crowley have done to the department. Zeke dismounted carefully, ribs still aching. How much time we got? Security cameras loop every 30 minutes. Guards on his dinner break. She checked her watch. We've got 20 minutes, tops. They moved swiftly through rows of identical storage units, their footsteps echoing off metal doors. Unit 237 looked no different from the others, but Marisol's hands shook as she fitted the key. You sure about this? Zeke steadied her wrist. Could lose your job. Could go to jail. Already too deep to back out. She turned the key. Besides, breaking and entering beats getting firebombed any day. The lock clicked. Zeke lifted the door slowly, wincing at every metallic groan. Their flashlight beams cut through musty darkness, revealing stacks of cardboard boxes and plastic bins. Mother of God, Marisol breathed. The unit was organized with military precision. Boxes labeled by date and case number lined metal shelves. A desk held a laptop and external hard drives. In one corner, a mini-fridge hummed quietly. "Check the fridge," Zeke said, moving to the boxes. "Bet that's where they keep their evidence." Marisol opened the fridge, gagging slightly. Bags of cocaine, heroin, all labeled and ready to plant. She photographed everything with her phone. Serial numbers match some of our victims' cases. Zeke pulled down a box marked 2021 Q3. Inside, dozens of falsified police reports, each following the same template. Suspicious behavior, erratic driving, probable cause. Attached were photographs of seized vehicles, property listings, auction records. "They documented everything," he said, disgust thick in his throat. "Like some kind of twisted accounting." "Makes sense." Marisol connected a thumb drive to the laptop. Had to keep track of their quotas. Which judges got which cases, which officials got which cuts. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Password protected, but I've got something for that." While she worked, Zeke discovered a filing cabinet. The bottom drawer held thick manila envelopes, personnel files on every cop who'd ever crossed Crowley and Keene. "Blackmail insurance," he muttered, "in case their own turned on them." "I'm in!" Marisol's voice crackled with excitement. "Dashcam archives, going back 3 years. All the footage they claimed was corrupted or lost." She started copying files, including your stop. Zeke moved behind her, watching the screen. There he was, riding peacefully. No weaving, no speeding, nothing that could be called reckless. Then Crowley and Keene appeared, and the violence unfolded in high definition. Clear as day. Marisol's jaw clenched. But look at these other files. She opened video after video. Black drivers being stopped, searched, arrested. Keene finding drugs in impossible places. Crowley roughing up protesters. Evidence being planted, rights being violated, lives being destroyed, all captured by the very cameras meant to prevent such abuse. They kept the footage. Zeke shook his head. Trophies? Leverage. Marisol worked faster. Insurance against each other. Nobody could talk without bringing everyone down. Her phone buzzed. 10 minutes left. They worked silently, efficiently. Marisol copied every file she could while Zeke photographed documents. The mini-fridge's contents went into evidence bags. Years of corruption, collected in minutes. "Got it all?" Zeke asked as they prepared to leave. "Everything that matters." She held up 3 thumb drives. Original, backup, and backup of the backup. Uploading to secure cloud storage as we speak. They restored the unit exactly as they'd found it. Marisol relocked the door, while Zeke swept for any traces of their presence. The security cameras would resume their normal feed in 2 minutes. Back at their vehicles, Marisol's hands trembled with excitement. "This is it. This is everything we need. Station's already blocked out prime time tomorrow night." "They'll try to stop it," Zeke warned. "Let them try." She patted her laptop bag. "Files are already distributed to 3 different editors, plus backups in 5 different cloud accounts, accessible to federal prosecutors if anything happens to us." Her grin was fierce. "Story airs at 6 tomorrow, no matter what." Zeke straddled his motorcycle, feeling lighter despite his aching ribs. "Your station ready for the fallout?" "Management's scared but committed. Plus, ratings will be through the roof." She headed for her car, then paused. "Zeke, thank you. For not backing down. For showing me what real courage looks like." He smiled, started his engine. "Thank you for believing an old man on a motorcycle." "Get home safe," she called. "Tomorrow, we set the truth free." Zeke rode through empty streets, the night air cool against his face. Stars wheeled overhead. same stars he'd ridden under for decades. But tonight, they seemed brighter, like justice itself was shining down. In his mind, he saw the faces from those files. Marcus Johnson, Sarah Williams, all the others whose lives had been shattered. Tomorrow, they'd know they weren't alone. Tomorrow, their stories would be heard. He thought of Sammy Green, watching him work on bikes. Thought of all the young men in his neighborhood, growing up under the shadow of corrupt badges. Tomorrow, they'd see that standing tall wasn't just talk. That truth could triumph over power. His motorcycle rumbled beneath him, steady as a heartbeat. Each mile brought him closer to home, closer to the moment when everything would change. The evidence rode safely in Marisol's care, ready to expose decades of corruption to the light. The morning sun filtered through Zeke's bedroom window, accompanied by the persistent ring of his phone. He blinked away sleep, reaching for the device. 5 missed calls from different news stations. Text messages flooded his screen. "Dad!" Alana's voice carried from the kitchen. "Channel 4 is on the phone again." Zeke pulled on his robe, muscles still aching from last night's storage unit raid. The smell of bacon and coffee drew him down the hallway. Alana stood at the stove, phone pressed between ear and shoulder. "Yes, he'll be available for comment after the broadcast," she said firmly. No early statements." She hung up, turning to her father with a grin. "Whole city's buzzing. Marisol's producer leaked that tonight's story will shake the foundations of local law enforcement. Let's hope those foundations come crashing down." Zeke eased into a kitchen chair, watching his daughter plate breakfast. She moved with their mother's grace, same determined set to her jaw. 2 eggs, extra crispy bacon, and toast. She set the plate before him. "You need your strength today." The phone rang again. Alana silenced it. "Eat first. Media circus later." Zeke took a bite of bacon, savoring the crunch. "You took the day off work?" "Hospital gave me personal leave. Everyone there's been following your story." She poured coffee. "Besides, no way I'm missing tonight's broadcast." They ate together, father and daughter, while the phones kept ringing. Outside, a news van crept past their house for the 3rd time. Neighborhood kids gathered on bikes, watching with excitement. "Remember what Mom always said?" Alana gathered their empty plates. "Truth rises like bread. Can't keep it down forever." Zeke smiled, remembering his wife's kitchen wisdom. "She'd be proud of you, baby girl, standing strong through all this. Learned from the best." She squeezed his shoulder. "Both of you." The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Zeke kept busy in his garage, tinkering with engines while dodging reporters. Judge Whitaker called to say he'd arranged security for the broadcast. Marisol texted updates about final edits and fact-checking. At 5:30, Zeke and Alana settled in front of their TV. The evening news theme music started playing when the first explosion rocked the station building. The screen went black, then static. Breaking news alerts flashed on their phones. Local station WKPD attacked. Multiple injuries. "Oh, God!" Alana's hands flew to her mouth. "Marisol!" The second explosion came from their front yard. Tear gas canisters crashed through windows. Front and back doors burst open simultaneously. "Police! On the ground!" Officer Crowley's voice boomed through the chaos. Officers in tactical gear swarmed in, weapons raised. Zeke moved to shield Alana, but rubber bullets caught him in the chest and legs. He went down hard. Through streaming eyes, he saw Crowley approaching with a familiar duffel bag. Well. Crowley knelt beside him, unzipping the bag. Anonymous tip about drugs and illegal weapons. Had to respond immediately. He began placing items around Zeke's fallen form, bags of powder, a sawed-off shotgun, brass knuckles. "You're planting evidence," Alana shouted, struggling against 2 officers. "We're recording everything." "No phones, No cameras? Crowley stood, admiring his handiwork. Just my official report about a dangerous felon resisting arrest. Chief Doyle sends his regards. They dragged Zeke up roughly, cuffs biting into his wrists. Alana's screams followed him out the door, where news crews had mysteriously gathered. Camera flashes captured his bloodied face, his stumbling walk to the patrol car. "Dad!" Alana fought to reach him. "I'll call Judge Whitaker. We'll fight this." Crowley shoved Zeke into the back seat. "Your daughter should be careful. Hospitals can be dangerous places for nurses. Lots of accidents happen during night shifts." Zeke's fury burned through the tear gas pain. "Touch her, and there's no hole deep enough to hide in." Big words from a man facing 20 years. Crowley slammed the door. The drive to county jail passed in a blur of pain and rage. Booking procedures, fingerprints, mug shots. They stripped away his dignity along with his clothes, issuing orange jumpsuit and plastic sandals. The cell door clanged shut. Zeke sat on the thin mattress, tasting blood from his split lip. Through the small window, he could see news helicopters circling the burning TV station. "They think this is the end," he whispered, touching the wedding ring they'd let him keep. "It's only the start." Other inmates watched him through cell bars, recognizing the man from the news. Some nodded in solidarity. Others turned away, knowing the system's power to crush resistance. Zeke's ribs throbbed where the rubber bullets had struck. His wrists bled from the too tight cuffs, but his spirit remained unbroken. They could lock his body, but not his truth. Minutes stretched into hours. No phone call, no lawyer, no rights read. Just the echo of boots on concrete as guards passed by, ignoring his presence. He thought of Marisol in the hospital, praying she'd survived. Thought of Alana alone in their tear-gassed home. Of Judge Whitaker probably fighting through bureaucratic walls to reach him. Of all the others who'd sat in cells like this, victims of the same corrupt machine. The night deepened. Somewhere in the city, evidence burned. Somewhere, Crowley and Doyle celebrated their victory. But they didn't understand what they were fighting. Didn't understand that some men couldn't be silenced by force. Blood dripped slowly from his lip, staining the orange fabric over his heart. Each drop a testament. Each breath a promise. They thought breaking his body would break his will. They were wrong. Through the long night, Zeke drifted between fitful sleep and painful wakefulness. The concrete bench offered no comfort, and every breath sent sharp pains through his bruised ribs. Around 3 a.m., heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. "Special delivery for the hero," a guard's voice sneered. Keys jangled, and the cell door creaked open. 3 guards entered, muscular men with cold eyes and practiced movements. Their name tags read Peterson, Martinez, and Williams. Peterson, the largest, cracked his knuckles. "Heard you like fighting cops," Williams said, twirling his baton. "Let's see how tough you really are, old man." Zeke rose slowly, hands raised. "I know my rights. You touch me, it's assault." Martinez laughed. "Cameras are down for maintenance. No witnesses here." The first blow caught Zeke in the kidney. He stumbled but didn't fall. The guards circled him, raining down punches and kicks while spitting racial slurs. Pain exploded across his body. Through the haze of agony, faces flashed before him. Young black men from his neighborhood who'd sat in his garage learning about engines and life. Tommy, who'd gotten his mechanic's certification last month. Marcus, heading to college on a scholarship. Deshaun, who'd turned his life around after prison. Their voices echoed in his memory. "You showed us how to stand tall," Tommy had said. "How to face down fear with dignity. You taught us never to kneel." Marcus's words rang clear. "Never let them steal your pride." Another blow sent Zeke to one knee. Blood dripped from his nose onto the concrete floor, but he forced himself up again. "Stay down if you know what's good for you," Peterson growled, landing another punch. Zeke spat blood and straightened his spine. "My father wouldn't kneel. My brothers in Vietnam didn't kneel. I won't start now." Outside the jail walls, unknown to Zeke, the city was awakening to outrage. Video of his arrest had gone viral overnight. Judge Whitaker worked through dawn, filing emergency motions challenging the suspicious timing and obvious setup. In her hospital bed, Marisol typed furiously on a laptop despite her burns. Her underground blog post, titled "The Truth They Tried to Burn," detailed everything: the evidence from Keene's storage unit, the pattern of corruption, the coordinated attack to silence them. Alana hadn't slept. She'd spent the night organizing with local churches and bike clubs. By sunrise, a crowd gathered outside the jail, holding signs demanding Zeke's release. Their chants carried faintly through the thick walls. "Free Zeke Turner! No justice, no peace!" The guards finally tired of their sport, leaving Zeke bleeding on the floor. He pulled himself onto the bench, every movement agony. But his spirit remained unbroken. Days blurred together. Zeke's lawyers, arranged by Judge Whitaker, fought the rigged system. Bail was set impossibly high, $500,000, but the community refused to let him rot. Church collection plates filled with donations. Bikers held fundraising rides. Local businesses contributed. Even children brought piggy banks to Alana, wanting to help Mr. Turner, who fixes our bikes. Marisol's blog posts went national. News crews camped outside the jail. Civil rights organizations demanded federal intervention. The pressure built like a gathering storm. In his cell, Zeke endured daily inspections that left fresh bruises. But each time the guards came, he stood taller. Other inmates began following his example, refusing to cower. The guards' power diminished in the face of such dignity. 2 weeks in, Judge Whitaker finally got a hearing. Evidence of tampering emerged. Security footage showing Crowley entering Zeke's house hours before the anonymous tip. The judge ordered an investigation. Chief Doyle tried damage control, but cracks appeared in the blue wall. Junior officers, inspired by the protests, began speaking out about witnessed corruption. The FBI opened a preliminary inquiry. 3 weeks after his arrest, Zeke heard unusual commotion. Running feet, excited voices. His cell door opened, and Judge Whitaker stood there with bail papers. "You're walking out of here," the judge said, eyes bright with victory. "The people raised your bail money." "All of it." Zeke changed back into street clothes, his hands shaking slightly. Every step hurt. Ribs still healing, joints stiff from concrete beds. But he walked tall through the booking area. The main doors opened to a sea of faces. Hundreds of people packed the street, holding signs and phones. Bikers revved engines in salute. Church ladies dabbed tears. Young men Zeke had mentored stood proud in their work uniforms, taking time off to welcome him home. "Zeke! Zeke! Zeke!" The chant started low, then swelled until it shook the air. Alana broke through the crowd, wrapping him in a gentle hug. "Welcome back, Daddy." Marisol was there too, arm in a sling, laptop balanced on her hip. "They couldn't bury the truth," she said fiercely. "We won't let them." As Zeke looked out over the crowd, black, white, Latino, Asian, young, old, all standing together, he saw what terrified Crowley and Doyle most. Not just one man's defiance, but a community awakened, united, unstoppable. The guards watched sullenly from windows as Zeke walked to his motorcycle, preserved by his students during his absence. The engine roared to life, and the crowd parted like a sea. Hundreds of phones recorded as Zeke Turner rode free, head high, spirit unbroken. The morning sun streamed through Judge Whitaker's study windows, casting long shadows across leather-bound law books and dark wooden shelves. Zeke sat in a high-backed chair, his body still aching from jail, while Marisol worked at her laptop on the mahogany desk. Her burns were healing, pink scars visible on her arms where she'd shielded her face from the explosion. But her eyes burned with the same intensity as ever. "They thought they destroyed everything in the fire," she said, fingers flying across the keyboard. "But I've been doing this job too long to keep only one copy." Judge Whittaker poured coffee into ceramic mugs, his movements precise and deliberate. "The old guard always underestimates the young ones. They don't understand modern technology." Marisol nodded, turning her screen to show them. "I uploaded everything to 5 different cloud services the night we found it. Encrypted, password protected, with automatic triggers to release if anything happened to me." Zeke leaned forward, wincing at his ribs. On the screen, crystal-clear footage showed Crowley and Keene's dashboard camera recordings. Years of traffic stops, planted evidence, brutal arrests. Their own voices bragging about quotas and kickbacks. "There's more," Marisol said, opening another folder. "Financial records I pulled before the fire. Asset seizure numbers that don't add up. Offshore accounts linked to shell companies owned by Doyle and Mayor Ridley." "My God," Whittaker whispered, adjusting his reading glasses. "They've been running this scheme for decades." Zeke studied a spreadsheet showing millions in seized assets, cars, cash, homes, taken from Black and Latino motorists. Most cases never went to court. The victims couldn't afford lawyers, or the evidence mysteriously vanished. "They didn't just target me," Zeke said, his voice rough. "They've been destroying lives systematically." Marisol pulled up a calendar on her phone. "The mayor's hosting a town hall meeting next week. It's supposed to be about police reform, pure PR damage control after your arrest. Every news station in the state will cover it," Whittaker added. "Ridley loves the spotlight. He'll try to paint himself as the solution. Instead, he'll be exposed as part of the problem." Marisol smiled grimly. "I still have press credentials. I can get us in." They spent hours plotting, mapping connections between corrupt officers, judges, and city officials on Whittaker's whiteboard. The web stretched wide. Kickbacks from towing companies, deals with evidence room supervisors, donations laundered through the police union. "Look at this pattern," Whittaker said, drawing lines between dates. Every major asset seizure was followed by large deposits to these shell companies. Then the money moved through a series of transfers before ending up in personal accounts. "Classic money laundering," Marisol agreed. "But they got sloppy. Left electronic trails." Zeke stood carefully, studying the board. "All these years, I thought it was just racist cops on a power trip. But this is organized crime with badges." "That's why they came at you so hard," Whittaker said. "You weren't just some biker they could abuse. You're a respected community leader. When you fought back, you threatened their whole operation." Marisol outlined their plan. She would attend the town hall as press, laptop ready to broadcast. Judge Whittaker would be in the audience, prepared to add legal weight to the revelations. And Zeke would be their surprise guest. "The mayor always takes questions at these events," she explained, "loves to show how connected he is to regular citizens. When he calls on me, I'll pull up the footage. Every TV station will have it live before they can cut the feed." "They'll try to stop us," Zeke warned. "Might get violent." "I've called some friends," Whittaker said. "Federal agents will be there undercover. And your biker brothers won't let anything happen to you this time." They worked through contingencies, backup drives, multiple angles to live stream, escape routes if things went bad. As the sun set, Marisol copied everything to a small flash drive. "This is it," she said, holding it out to Zeke. "Every dirty deal, every false arrest, every dollar they stole, their whole corrupt kingdom." Zeke took the drive, feeling its weight in his palm. Such a small thing to carry so much truth. He thought of all the lives destroyed by these men, families torn apart, homes lost, futures stolen. The young men in his neighborhood who'd learned to fear police instead of trust them. "You know they'll come for us after this," Marisol said softly. "Once it's out, we'll all be targets." "Let them come," Whitaker replied. "I've lived long enough to see too many injustices buried. Not this time." Zeke gripped the flash drive tight. Faces flashed through his mind. His father who'd taught him dignity, his wife who'd believed in justice, the kids who watched him work on bikes and learned about respect. All the people who'd raised bail money, who'd protested outside the jail, who'd refused to let his voice be silenced. "This time," he said, "the world will see everything." Through Whitaker's window, the city lights began twinkling on, one by one. Somewhere out there, Crowley and Keene were still wearing badges. Doyle was probably in his office, thinking he was untouchable. Mayor Ridley was likely rehearsing speeches about reform and reconciliation. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that their carefully built empire of corruption was about to crumble. All because they'd picked the wrong man to break. On the wrong Sunday morning. The town hall auditorium buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled. News cameras lined the back wall. And Mayor Ridley stood at the podium in his finest suit, working the crowd like a practiced showman. "Unity isn't just a word," he proclaimed, his voice carrying through perfectly positioned microphones. "It's our promise to this community. Tonight, we begin healing the divide between law enforcement and our citizens." Behind him, a row of uniformed officers stood at attention, badges gleaming under the spotlights. Chief Doyle sat in a place of honor, looking smug and secure. At the back entrance, Zeke adjusted his leather vest, checking the flash drive in his pocket one last time. Judge Whitaker stood beside him in his most formal suit, while Marisol clutched her laptop bag, press badge visible around her neck. "You ready?" Whitaker whispered. Zeke nodded, his jaw set. "Been ready my whole life." They moved through the crowd as Ridley continued his performance. "We've heard your concerns about police conduct," the mayor said, spreading his hands. "That's why we're implementing new sensitivity training." "Liar!" someone shouted from the crowd. Ridley didn't miss a beat. "We welcome all voices here. This is a safe space for dialogue." Marisol split off, heading toward the press section. Whitaker took a seat near the center aisle. Zeke moved steadily forward, his presence drawing whispers and pointing fingers. "Is that the biker they arrested? What's he doing here?" Ridley spotted him and faltered mid-sentence. Chief Doyle leaned forward, hand moving toward his gun. In the wings, Zeke saw Crowley and Keene push through a door, radioing frantically. "And now," Ridley recovered, "we'll take questions from our concerned citizens." "I've got one," Zeke called out, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. He stepped into the center aisle. "How long you been taking kickbacks from corrupt cops?" The room erupted. Cameras swiveled. Ridley gripped the podium. "Sir, this isn't the appropriate forum." "When is appropriate?" Zeke demanded, moving closer. "When more lives are destroyed? More evidence planted? More money stolen?" "Security!" Doyle barked. Crowley burst through the side door with 4 officers charging toward Zeke. The crowd scattered, chairs scraping. But Zeke stood his ground. "Everyone stay calm," Ridley urged into the mic. "This man is a known agitator." "I'm a Vietnam vet," Zeke shot back. "A business owner. A mentor to kids you abandoned. And I've got proof of every dirty deal you've made." Crowley reached him first, swinging. Zeke blocked and countered with an elbow strike that sent the corrupt cop staggering. Another officer grabbed him from behind. Zeke broke the hold with a move learned decades ago in basic training. Keene rushed in with a baton. Zeke caught his wrist, twisted, and sent him sprawling into the front row. The crowd gasped as Zeke pulled his heavy bike chain from his belt, swinging it in a defensive arc. "Stay back," he warned. "He's got a weapon," Doyle shouted. "Take him down." 3 more officers charged. Zeke met them with controlled fury, chain-striking hands reaching for weapons, boots finding knees, elbows breaking grips. His body remembered every lesson from the army, every street fight survived, every moment of dignity defended. Crowley recovered, face red with rage. He tackled Zeke into a row of chairs. They crashed through, trading brutal punches. Someone screamed. Cameras flashed. "You should have stayed down," Crowley snarled. "Never learned how," Zeke growled back, head-butting him. They rolled across the floor, neither man willing to submit. Zeke's ribs screamed from the jail beatings, but he fought through the pain. This wasn't just about him anymore. Keene and 2 other officers piled on, driving Zeke face down. His cheek pressed against cold tile as handcuffs appeared. Still, he struggled. "It's over, old man," Crowley panted. "Show them," Zeke yelled toward the press section. "Show them everything." "Shut him up," Doyle ordered. A knee pressed into Zeke's back. He couldn't breathe, but he wouldn't stop fighting. Not now. Not ever. Through the chaos, he heard Marisol's voice. "Rolling footage now!" The first images appeared on the giant screen behind the stage. Dashboard camera views, clear as day. Crowley planting drugs. Keene falsifying reports. Money changing hands. "Cut the feed!" Ridley screamed. But it was too late. Every news camera was capturing it. Phones live-streamed. The truth was loose, impossible to cage again. Zeke took another punch, tasting blood. The officers pressed harder, trying to silence him, but he kept struggling, even as darkness crept into his vision. Because he knew something they didn't. This wasn't about winning the fight anymore. It was about showing everyone watching that some things were worth fighting for, worth bleeding for, worth refusing to submit, no matter the cost. They could beat him. They could jail him. But they couldn't break his spirit. And now, finally, the whole world would see exactly who they really were. The giant screen flickered to life behind the stage, bathing the chaotic hall in a harsh blue glow. Crowley's knee dug deeper into Zeke's back, but even through his pain, Zeke heard the collective gasp as the first video began to play. Crystal-clear dash-cam footage showed Crowley approaching a black teenager's car. "Watch this," Crowley's recorded voice sneered. "Easy money." The officer pulled a small bag from his vest pocket, then pretended to find it under the driver's seat. The teenager protested, tears streaming down his face. "My God," someone whispered in the crowd. More footage rolled, Keene counting seized cash in his cruiser, laughing. "Chief's gonna love this haul." Doyle in his office, sorting stacks of money with Mayor Ridley. Scene after scene of planted evidence, beaten suspects, and stolen property. The weight on Zeke's back suddenly lifted. Crowley stood frozen, staring at his own crimes projected 20 feet high. The other officers stepped back, faces pale. "Turn it off!" Doyle screamed, rushing toward the AV booth. But Marisol had locked herself inside, the footage continuing to roll from multiple backups. The silence shattered. Shouts of anger erupted from the crowd. "Arrest them! Criminals with badges!" People surged forward, phones recording everything. Zeke pushed himself up, spitting blood. His ribs screamed, but adrenaline dulled the pain. He saw Crowley and Keene backing toward a side exit. "They're running!" someone yelled. Before they could reach the door, it burst open. Men in dark jackets with FBI emblazoned across them swarmed in, weapons drawn. "Federal agents! Everyone freeze!" Crowley spun, saw Zeke rising, and charged with desperate fury. "You ruined everything!" Zeke met him head-on. Their bodies collided with the impact of years of hatred and rage. Crowley swung wild haymakers, but Zeke stayed controlled, focused. He blocked a punch and drove his fist into Crowley's stomach, doubling the corrupt cop over. "This is for every life you destroyed," Zeke growled. His elbow caught Crowley's jaw, snapping his head back. Blood sprayed from split lips. The crowd pressed against the walls, giving them space, watching justice unfold in real time. Keene tried to run, but slammed into a wall of angry protesters. They grabbed him, holding him for the approaching federal agents. Mayor Ridley attempted to slip out through the crowd, but Judge Whitaker's voice boomed, "Stop that man!" Hands reached out, trapping the mayor in place. Doyle pulled his gun, but FBI agents surrounded him instantly. "Drop it, Chief! It's over!" On the screen above, the evidence continued to play. Years of corruption exposed in high definition. The sound of Crowley and Keene laughing while counting stolen money echoed through the hall. Crowley, desperate now, grabbed a metal chair and swung it at Zeke's head. Zeke ducked, let the momentum carry Crowley past him, then drove his knee up into the officer's ribs. The chair clattered away. "Stay down," Zeke warned. But Crowley wouldn't, couldn't. His whole world was crumbling, and he had nothing left to lose. He rushed forward, tackling Zeke into the podium. It crashed down, sending them both rolling across the stage. They grappled, trading short, brutal punches. Crowley clawed at Zeke's eyes, fought dirty like a cornered animal. But Zeke had survived worse. War, racism, loss. He'd carried the weight of dignity through darker days than this. With deadly calm, Zeke trapped Crowley's arm, twisted, and drove his elbow into the sweet spot where jaw met ear. Crowley went limp. The hall erupted in cheers. Federal agents moved in, zip ties ready. "Ezekiel Turner," the lead agent called. "We've been building this case for months. Your evidence broke it wide open." Zeke stood over Crowley's unconscious form, breathing hard. Just doing what's right. More agents poured in, securing the exits. They cuffed Doyle, who kept shouting about his connections and lawyers. Ridley went quietly, head down, his political career ending in disgrace. Keene sobbed as they led him out, finally breaking under the weight of his crimes. "I'll tell you everything, every case, every planted bag, every stolen dollar." The crowd pressed closer, phones recording everything. Their angry shouts transformed into something stronger, more unified. It started in the back, spread like fire through the rows. "Justice for Zeke! Justice for Zeke!" The chant grew louder, shaking the walls. Decades of fear and silence breaking into a roar of defiance. Marisol emerged from the AV booth, laptop clutched to her chest. She nodded to Zeke, tears in her eyes. "We did it." Judge Whitaker clasped Zeke's shoulder. "You showed them what real courage looks like." Zeke watched as agents dragged Crowley's limp form away. The officer's badge fell from his uniform, landing face down on the stage. Just a piece of metal now, stripped of its corrupt power. The chants continued. Hundreds of voices joined as one. "Justice for Zeke! Justice for Zeke!" Through the pain and exhaustion, Zeke felt something he hadn't experienced since that first day on the highway. Peace. Not from violence or vengeance, but from truth, finally breaking through the darkness. Standing on that stage, watching justice sweep through the hall like a cleansing storm, he remembered every person who'd told him to stay quiet, to accept abuse, to kneel before power. He'd proven them all wrong, not just for himself, but for every victim of badge-heavy bullies who'd never seen their day in court. The autumn sun streamed through the open garage door, catching dust motes dancing in the air. Zeke's hands moved with practiced grace over a motorcycle engine, his fingers finding each part by memory. The scars on his knuckles were still pink and new, but they didn't slow him down. Sammy Green leaned forward on his wooden stool, eyes wide with fascination. "So that's what makes it run smooth." He pointed at the carburetor Zeke was cleaning. "That's right." Zeke's voice carried the same quiet strength it always had, maybe even stronger now. "Engine's like a person. Treat it with respect. It'll do right by you." 4 other neighborhood kids sat scattered around the garage, some on upturned milk crates, others cross-legged on the concrete floor. They watched Zeke work like students in a classroom, soaking up every word and movement. The radio on the workbench crackled with news updates between songs. Federal grand jury has returned indictments against 37 current and former police officers in the growing corruption scandal. Mayor Charles Ridley faces additional charges of conspiracy. Zeke allowed himself a small smile as he reached for a wrench. The system hadn't changed overnight, but cracks had formed in its foundation. Light was getting through. "Mr. Turner!" One of the younger kids, Marcus, pointed at the small TV mounted in the corner. "You're on the news again." They all turned to watch. Footage showed Zeke testifying before a panel of stern-faced officials, his head held high as he detailed years of police harassment and corruption. The caption read, "Turner testimony leads to police reform bill." "Looking good up there, old man," Sammy grinned. "Watch who you're calling old," Zeke replied, but his eyes crinkled with warmth. These kids had stood by him through everything, showing up at rallies, spreading the truth on social media when the mainstream news tried to bury it. The garage door creaked, and Marisol Vega stepped in, holding up a shiny plaque. "Guess who just won the National Press Award for Investigative Journalism?" The kids cheered as she took an exaggerated bow. The burn scars on her neck and arms were still visible, but like Zeke's wounds, they'd become badges of honor rather than marks of trauma. "Couldn't have done it without you, Mr. Turner," she said, setting the award on his cluttered workbench. "You gave me the story of a lifetime." "You gave me justice," Zeke countered. "That's worth more than any award." They heard the sound of heels on concrete, and Alana appeared in the doorway. She'd just finished her nursing shift, still in her scrubs, but her tired face lit up at the sight of her father surrounded by his young apprentices. "Got time for one more student?" she asked, stepping carefully around scattered tools. Zeke wiped his hands on a shop rag. "Always got time for you, baby girl." She wrapped him in a tight hug, not caring about the grease stains on his shirt. "Saw the governor signing that reform bill on TV," she whispered. "You didn't just fight for yourself, Daddy. You fought for all of us." Zeke held his daughter close, remembering her tears in the hospital, her fierce protection during his darkest moments. "We fought together," he corrected. "All of us did." The afternoon light softened as Zeke finished the engine repairs. One by one, the kids drifted home for dinner, each stopping to fist-bump their mentor before leaving. Sammy lingered longest, helping clean up tools. "When you gonna teach me to ride, Mr. Turner?" he asked, not for the first time. Zeke studied the young man's eager face. "Soon," he promised. "Got to learn the machine before you can master it." "That's what my old man taught me." After everyone left, Zeke stood in his garage doorway, watching the sunset paint the sky in fierce oranges and purples. His Harley gleamed in the dying light, restored to perfection after the highway incident. The sound of approaching vehicles made him tense for a split second. Old habits died hard. But it was just evening traffic, regular people heading home from work. No cruisers lurking with bad intentions, no sirens splitting the peace. He swung his leg over the Harley's seat, feeling the familiar leather embrace him. The engine roared to life with a turn of the key, its deep rumble speaking of power and freedom. The highway stretched before him like an invitation as he rode, wind washing away the day's sweat and worry. No flashing lights appeared in his mirrors, No sirens wailed behind him. Just the road, the rumble of his bike, and the endless horizon. Other motorcycles appeared alongside him, friendly faces nodding in recognition. Word had spread through the biker community about his stand against corruption. Now, every rider who passed gave him the low wave of respect. The setting sun painted everything in gold, including the new billboard rising above the interstate. It showed Marisol's serious face next to bold letters. Corruption has nowhere to hide. Below that, smaller text advertised her upcoming book about the case. Zeke rode past city limits, past the spot where Crowley and Keene had tried to break him. That place held no power over him now. The men who'd attacked him were facing decades in federal prison, along with dozens of their corrupt colleagues. The wind carried the last warmth of autumn, promising change was coming. Winter would follow, then spring, and the cycle would continue. But something fundamental had shifted in their corner of the world. People walked taller, looked authority in the eye, refused to accept abuse as normal. A flock of birds wheeled overhead, free on the wind, their wings catching the last rays of sunlight. Zeke twisted the throttle, letting his Harley's engine sing louder. The highway belonged to everyone now, not just those with badges and power. He rode on, mile after mile, tasting victory in the cooling air. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.